All right, everybody. Good morning, good afternoon. Hope everyone's having a great day. So, today I would like to discuss the current state of the Xbox. The reason why I brought this up as a topic is because I am an Xbox fan. It actually is one of the only consoles out there that I've owned every single iteration of, starting back with the original Xbox in 2002. I got that when I was working at CompUSA. This was the second year. It came with a smaller S controller. It was when they had the Sega GT and Jet Set Radio Future double pack. So I used that one. I also started using Xbox Live when it first came out, so I was one of the first adopters of that service. So you can say that I have a good, deal of background with the brand and how they've handled themselves. I did have a 360. I did have an Xbox One, both the original with the Kinect, and then also the one that was the Xbox One X. So, and I currently have a Series X. So, as I'm doing this video, they had recently announced the new president of Xbox, Asha, had recently announced the layoffs, and I believe 1,600 were laid off so far, with another 1,600 in the coming months. By the end of the year, I believe. They covered things from developers to backwards compatible groups to a whole plethora of different Xbox employees. And obviously, in the corporate world, the easiest way to save some money is to let people go, because that's your most expensive asset, but it's also your most creative asset, so it's a fine balancing line for that. I enjoyed the Xbox mainly because I really like the controller. I think it's the most comfortable controller out there. Not really a fan of the Sony controllers. They always felt weird in my hand. I did not really like where the DualShock placement was for the analog sticks. I think it's more comfortable where it is offset with the Xbox controller. I like how you can use regular batteries in it or a battery pack, so that if your controller dies from too many charges, you don't have to go out and buy another one or do surgery to replace the battery on it. You can just swap out AA. I like how there's not a lot of gimmicks in the controller. However, I would like an accelerometer at some point, mainly to help with shooting games. I'm not great at thumbstick aiming, so having an accelerometer would help immensely. When I did have a Switch, I did enjoy using that because I could move the Switch around to be able to aim better, because I'm just not really that good at thumbstick aiming. Mouse and keyboard from back in the days, what I learned. I also like the backwards compatibility. I like the fact that any game from the original Xbox One will work on the Series X, whether it's digital or physical. I like that there's a large catalog of 360 games. I like that there's a large catalog of the original Xbox games available. I know not everything is available due to licensing issues and due to compatibility, but I think that overall, having a Series X that gives you access to the entire back catalog of games from each generation is quite attractive. I know Sony kind of does that with some of their systems, but it's always never been like a main, it's never really been like a main selling feature for forecast, and I do not want to get stuck in the rain on the motorcycle. I was originally planning on taking the bike, but it was still a little rainy, a little damp. And then when I was driving into here, it was actually starting to sprinkle a little bit. So I'm a sunny weather rider for the most part. So the WRX it is. It's also fitting because right now I'm playing a lot of Forza Horizon 6 on my Series X, and I actually have this car as my main car that I bought. I bought them in every tier level you could, maxed out the power on them to make them the most attractive and fastest car. So it's my most used car. Is the Subaru WRX 22 model. You know, so 26. And then I took the color grading the best I could. Since my car is Galaxy Purple Pearl, I did the best I could in the paint editor. I'm not really great at that kind of stuff, but I was able to for the most part, get it in the right light. It looks just like my car. So yeah, so I basically drive my car in Forza Horizon 6. I will also probably be having a video for Forza Horizon 6 in the near future on my thoughts on that, because I've been a huge Forza fan since the original one on Xbox. So going back to the current status of Xbox, we all know that they are losing a lot of money. We all know that they are going to be raising prices again, and unfairly, I think that people are targeting Microsoft for raising prices on the Series X and S's, because everybody has to use everyone is buying the same components with the AI boom and data centers, and I will do a video on those at some point as well. Taking up all the materials, from what I understand, is a lot like these RAM orders. They've already been allocated before they've even been manufactured, so obviously everything left just costs money. This is the first time in the history of console gaming where components are actually going up in price and the consoles don't get cheaper. Ever since going back to the days of the Atari 2600, anytime that you had the system, you would always lose, or the money would always go down in price as the system got older, because components got cheaper, the cheaper manufacturer. Not the case with this generation, so it's very weird, and I think that's both hurt the Xbox more so than the PlayStation, because before someone would buy both of them, and now they probably can't afford to buy both of them unless you're entrenched in the Xbox ecosystem. Right now, Sony is I think the console where you get the most exclusives, because you both have great third-party support. But Sony has exclusives like Spider-Man, and then they have the new Wolverine movie, the new Wolverine game is coming out, and they have the Last of Us games, and they have the Horizon Dawn games, and then they also have God of War, and so I think Sony is doing a better job with their IPs. So, and that's and all this is going to tie into the Xbox shortly, but I think just Sony's doing a better job. Now, it wasn't always this way. If you remember back when the Xbox 360 and PlayStation 3 launched, how much Sony fumbled that with having a more expensive console. They were too high and mighty at the time, because the PlayStation 2 was the best-selling console of all time, so they kind of took the route of, we can do whatever we want, people will buy it, and unfortunately they learned that that's not the case. So I think that Microsoft back in the 360 era, they were smart. They released the product a year early to get the first high-def gaming experiences out there, minus your PCs, obviously. They had it at a lower price point by $100 than the PlayStation, which obviously something that one of my teachers in high school, government teachers, taught me, was that Americans vote with their wallets. So you're going to spend, if you can save $100, you're going to save $100. It was also easier to program for, and I know that a lot of those games that came out, a lot of them were Xbox exclusive long before they went to PlayStation. I mean, that's what won for the majority of that generation, 360, even with the Red Ring of Death. You had games like BioShock, you had the Elder Scrolls Oblivion, you had, everything was on Xbox first, right? And eventually they came to PlayStation 3, but Xbox was the only place you could really get those kind of exclusives. And they've kind of lost that in the last couple generations. I know at the end of the day, and during that generation, the PlayStation 3 did eke it out, and I think a lot of that has to do with Japan. But if you think about that, considering that, you know, the Xbox never really sells good in Japan, that's an entire market that they lost, and they still almost won. But I do also appreciate that they actually tried hard with Japan with the 360. You know, they had the Miss Walker Studios that did Lost Odyssey and Blue Dragon, which were exclusives. They had Mass Effect, even though it's Western RPG in the exclusive as well. They had Eternal Sonata. They had Tales of Vesperia, which were all originally Xbox exclusives before they went to PlayStation. So they got that market in America, as well as somewhat in Japan, even though it didn't sell a lot, they still did. So going forward, or how I think my Xbox got to where they are now, it all started, I think, with Xbox One era, because as we all know, when the original announcement for the Xbox One, it was all about TV this, TV that, TV that, control everything with Kinect. And it's $100 more than the PlayStation 4. So Sony just took that and said, okay, our system is $100 less. We're not forcing it into a gimmick. It's actually more powerful because you don't have to use the computing power to work with the Kinect. And Microsoft also did the whole weird thing about not sharing used games, selling things, and Sony obviously capitalized on that with their comical video of one person handing a game to each other, where, you know, I think that sealed the deal for Xbox for that generation. And you know, they backpedaled a lot. They got rid of Don, who was the guy who said all that, but the damage was done, and they clawed, and they never really had a chance after that. And the consumer confidence was broken. So, and I think the problem with Xbox One was that they just didn't have a lot of exclusives. Every year it was something like Halo, Gears, Forza, which are fine titles and fine franchises, but you need something else. I mean, I know every once in a while they had like the Sunset Overdrive, they had Cuphead, they had Ori, they had Quantum Break. So they tried, but it just wasn't enough, and it wasn't kind of the same as what Sony had on the PlayStation 4. I mean, they were just killing it apart with the PlayStation 4. So I think that was a momentum that they've had a hard time catching back from the 360 because of that. So when the Series X, S, and the PlayStation 5 launched, it was right there in the height of COVID. So people were buying them, but they were always buying, in my opinion, the PlayStation 5 first, and the Xbox was the ones that was left over if no one else could find anything, because they were selling as well. I also think that launching the Series S alongside the Series X was not the smartest move. I understand why they did it. They figured that if they got on with a lower price point, they could kind of get the next generation at a lower entry level. The problem with that is that you have a lot of people that are the actual gaming audience are not going to go with that. They're going to go with the Series X. My nephew, for example, has a Series S because it was cheaper. He's fine with it, but he's also 12, and he got it when he was 9. So there's not going to be much about it. For someone that age, doesn't really care. But another problem was a lot of the developers didn't like the Series S because it hindered their games. I remember the developers of Baldur's Gate 3 had to postpone the release of that game because they couldn't get it to work properly on the Series S because it wasn't powerful enough. So you're basically causing this roadblock in your ecosystem because you're trying to have them shoehorn in these games that are trying to take the full advantage of the PS5 and the Series X's potential. But then you gotta say, oh, you also got to make it work on the Series S because we promised that every game that would work on the Series X would work on the Series S. So I think it dilutes the brand a little bit. But again, I understand why they did it. I hope for the next generation that they just have one unit and not the dual ones, because it's gonna, I think, cause the same problem where you So what I think they also should do to kind of right the ship, as it were, if they can, I would get rid of Game Pass. Now, I say this as a Game Pass subscriber, but I also use a lot of the perks on Game Pass, where if you play every single day, you get credits, and I use those towards gift cards. So at the end of the day, my Game Pass subscription doesn't cost me as much, because I'm just re-upping the credits that I can use with doing the streaks and things like that. But the problem with Game Pass is that developers aren't making any money. They're just renting them as a licensing fee, and obviously they don't make as much. So I know a lot of developers are not fans of Game Pass. I know that Asha said they were hoping to have 70 million Game Pass subscribers by now, and they only hit 30, which is not a shabby number in the grand scheme of things. I remember back in the 90s, having 30 million consoles sold and everything would be considered outstanding. I mean, I know Microsoft has stopped publishing their numbers for the last decade, but if you could take 30 million Game Pass subscribers and then add on everyone who doesn't have Game Pass, they had to have at least sold 30 to 40 million Series X's and S's, which isn't small by any means, but it's still half of what the PlayStation 5 is selling. So gaming has become so big that it's amazing how 40 million units sold is considered a failure. So I think if they got rid of that, I think that they would be in a better place. I think if they copied Sony's strategy, because Sony, I think, copied it with theirs with their PlayStation Plus and that kind of stuff. It didn't really work well for them. So if they went back to the gold idea with the games with gold, I think that would work better, where you get older titles for free that have been out there for a few years, and you can just get them. So you're going to try other games that you normally wouldn't, but you also get copies of games that you normally wouldn't buy. Another thing I think they should do is take the exclusives with their IPs that they have and make them exclusive. They paid billions of dollars for Activision, all this money for Bethesda, and they're not really utilizing those studios. And when they're using them, I mean, the Elder Scrolls 6, they had a teaser video, what, 4 or 5 years ago, and that's it. And they still haven't confirmed if it's only going to be on the Xbox consoles or with the PC as well. I think that they need to leave that exclusivity. I mean, it might hurt, they might lose sales, but it's going to drive more hardware sales, because if they truly want to buy, or if a console gamer truly doesn't want to spend the money on a PC and truly wants to play the Elder Scrolls, they're going to have to buy the Xbox. That's what gets you to buy it, right? I do like the fact that they're doing the PC, the Xbox Anywhere option, where if you buy the Xbox version, you also get the PC version, and vice versa. I think that's a smart idea. It does show value for people that use both PCs and also Xbox, especially with the handheld PC that Xbox has with Asus out there. It's nice knowing that you can have, you can do a game on your handheld, continue it later on in your Xbox, go back and forth, and share the file. I like that idea. But again, make those exclusives. Keep those exclusives. Another thing that I would have them do is get some of those old IPs out. Microsoft is sitting on a wealth of IPs. I mean, thinking from the original Xbox era, you have Crimson Skies, you have MechAssault, you have all those that came out on the Xbox that they actually own. Why not release newer games than that? They're just dormant IPs we're not doing anything with. Yeah, doing the the 3 major Forza, Gears, and Horizon, or Forza, Gears, and Halo, but give people some other things so they have other things to look forward to. Diversify that portfolio. Don't know if that's going to happen, but we've been pleasantly surprised. Another thing I would also do is, and I don't know how much power Asha has, is kind of talk to Microsoft, Big Daddy Microsoft, and let them do their own thing. I think when the corporate juggernaut of Microsoft gets involved, I think things get muddied. I mean, Microsoft alone is a massive company, right? And they don't even make that much money off Xbox. It's a side project for them for a lot. I mean, they're making their money on the cloud services, on the server hosting, on operating systems, on there's productivity software. I mean, that's Microsoft's bread and butter. That's what makes them the money. Xbox is the gaming side that, if you know the history, that they brought to Bill Gates and said it'd be cool if we did this, and Bill was like, okay, you can try. I think if they give them more autonomy and let them just do it, I think they would do better, because I believe in the 360 era, that's actually how they were doing so well, was that Microsoft was like, okay, you have fun, you know, come back to us if you need it, but, you know, do your own thing. I mean, that's my thoughts. Let me know in the comments what else you think, because I would like to have interaction discussions, right? My idea for all these videos is to hopefully build a community where we can discuss, rant about things without a corporate overlord looking at us like a major publication site or any of the manufacturers. Like, I would like to have this be a small grassroots community where we can discuss gaming, discuss nerd topics, things like that, because nerds are nothing more than very outspoken about what they like. It is what it is. It's the nature of who we are. So I think if we, you know, communicate and do that kind of stuff, we can grow this channel and actually get some good communities going. I can't really think of anything else right now for Xbox, other than also stop putting your games on competing consoles, because that, again, dilutes the brand. So, you know, but if you have any ideas, let me know. Expect a follow-up at some point on my thoughts on Horizon 6. But other than that, have a great day, guys, and I hope to see you later.